5:30, you can go ahead and start.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, I believe we are good to start. Chairman Harless.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is the May meeting executive session of the Germantown Planning Commission. It is a virtual meeting. Appreciate everyone that's in attendance. We have a couple of ground rules that I'd like to mention before we get started. One, mute your cell phones. Two, remember it is a formal meeting. And three, as we go through presentations, at the end of the presentation, I'm going to do an alphabetical roll call to see if any of the commissioners have questions. So after each presentation, whether it be the staff presentation or the applicant presentation, I will do a poll of each of the commissioners if you have a question. Are there any questions about that? If not, Cameron, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman Harless. The one item that we have in front of us tonight is for the Wilder Plan rezoning. This is within the Forest Hill Irene Road, Germantown Municipal School District property at Forest Hill Elementary. This is part of a larger land exchange that has occurred between the Germantown Municipal School District, the City of Germantown, and Taylor Land Investors. The proposal in front of you tonight is for 3 acres of property to be rezoned from RE1 residential estate 1 acre lots to R low density single family residential that would line up with the rest of the property that Mr. Duke has assembled for the Wilder subdivision that he will be bringing back to this planning commission once this rezoning is in place. Just because we did not have a subcommittee, wanted to go over some of the details of this project. This is currently within a larger area that would, if approved, this would be incorporated into the adjacent 32-acre property to the north that's already zoned R low-density single-family residential to create a seamless single-family residential development. This started with this planning commission in 2017 when a BZA approval was done for the elementary school in this area. In 2018, the BMA approved a rezoning from RE1 to R for a large chunk of the 32-acre property that Mr. Duke is going to incorporate these 3 acres into. And in February of 2020, the BMA approved a land exchange agreement, which included the following. The school district would deed 3 acres of their property currently zoned RE1 to Taylor Land Investors to incorporate it into this larger property. Taylor Land Investors would deed 5 acres of their property on the north side along the existing railroad tracks to the city for use of public utilities. And then there were other properties that the city is transferring over to the school district as part of this 3-way land exchange. However, in order for these 3 acres to be developed consistently with the rest of the property, the applicant is requesting that they be rezoned to R, low-density single-family residential. They provided with your packet a justification letter explaining their request for the change in zoning. As we've discussed over the years, the municipal code does permit changes in zoning districts whenever the public necessity, convenience, general welfare, or good zoning practices justify such action per 2366 of the code. The state of Tennessee also established the following criteria that helps to determine what's a change in the neighborhood, and that's changes in population to the area as well as surrounding areas, changes in existing road patterns, traffic volumes, including development of new roadways, the need of the rezoning based on whatever changes is classified within the neighborhood, and then the effect of the requested change in zoning on additional or adjoining nearby property. Within this area, a sketch has been provided as to how the property would be developed if this use was granted. That was also provided as the concept plan for the application. That's on page 8 of the staff report. The applicant has conducted neighborhood outreach for this request in the form of both an outreach letter and a recorded restrictive covenant agreement with some of the nearby neighbors. This documentation was also included in the extra material with the packet. Approval of this rezoning does not signify or imply approval of the concept plan. If the Planning Commission does approve this, it would have to go on to the BMA, and the applicant, if approved on that 3-reading process, the applicant would have to come back and submit their subdivision plan for approval of the Planning Commission for all the plans on the site. Within staff comments, it's mostly about process and minor revisions to the concept plan, and those have been revised to show only the lots within the 3 acres as indicated in the italics for each of staff's comments. The applicant was quick to respond to these. The neighborhood letter was sent out to property owners on April 24th, explaining the zoning request, discussing the Planning Commission meeting date, and was provided with Ms. Anita Archambault with ETI as the point of contact. Anita, I apologize if I stumbled over that, but we do have Anita, Steve Hooper with ETI, and John Duke with us as part of this executive session. A copy of the letter that they sent out has been provided. The recorded agreement was also provided within the packet, and a vicinity map was provided showing all of those who signed the declaration. Public Works is just wanting to make sure that everything lines up as this moves forward, and those issues will be sorted out as this development moves forward. And then MLGW provided their standard set of considerations. That's it for a simple yet thorough introduction to this at the executive session.
Mr. Ross, thank you for the outstanding presentation. Commissioners, I'm now going to call alphabetically your names and give you each a chance to ask questions. And if it can be directed either to Mr. Ross or to the applicants.
Well, Chairman Harless, let's remember that we're still in executive session, so let's hold off on applicants. But applicants, if you hear something, just be prepared to answer that in the regular meeting once we get to 6 o'clock and move forward.
Good point, Mr. Ross. Thank you. Commissioner Bacon, questions?
Oh, I had to turn my microphone off. I don't think I really have any questions. Has there been any neighborhood feedback emails like today? They usually come in late.
We did not receive any through the email that was set up to assist in the public hearing portion of this. I should have said that on the front end. Similar to the Board of Mayor and Alderman practice, we set up a Planning Commission public hearing email address that was sent out as part of the meeting announcement and the publication of this meeting, the public notice, letting people know that if they had comments on this particular item, that they were to email those comments to that email address prior to 12 noon today. And as of 12:01, Ms. Pounder and Ms. Goraleski reported to me that we did not receive any comments for or against this. Did either of you receive individual emails in your regular email addresses outside of the public hearing email account?
No, I did not.
No.
Commissioner Bacon, any other questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Commissioner Clark?
No questions here.
Is Commissioner Hernandez joined us? I don't believe he has. Commissioner Hicks, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Marsh?
No questions, thank you.
Has Alderman Owens joined us? I don't believe he's joined us yet. Mayor Palazzolo?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Sanders?
No questions this time.
Thank you, and I have no questions. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Cameron.
At this point, we don't really have anything to report. I would defer to the mayor if you want to take this opportunity to discuss anything with the Planning Commission that you see relevant.
Director Ross, thank you for the opportunity. No, I think there was a question asked earlier about citizen comments or anything. I'll just speak for myself. I've received none on this particular application that's in front of us this evening. Thanks.
Cameron, before we adjourn the executive session, I want to remind all the board members that you still are required to have your continuing education hours for this year. So this is a good time to be watching webinars and videos on different subjects at this point. And just make sure you fill out the form and email to either Sarah or myself so that we can have documentation for our records. Thank you.
I have just one comment, if I may. For this evening, may not be controverted. It is rezoning, and it's important for each of the Planning Commission members to give reasons for their vote, yea or nay.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Mr. Ross, I have a question.
Yes.
Can you explain in more detail regarding the agreement the neighbors signed with the developer?
I will do my best to try and summarize that, but the agreement was about the lot sizes and the number of lots on the development. A private restrictive covenant was recorded when the first rezoning went into place, and when Mr. Duke and the city and the school district started discussing this land exchange, the agreement was opened back up and modified to incorporate in this 3-acre area and allow for a slight increase in number of lots based on the addition of the land and some of the shuffling around of lots that Mr. Duke had to do. He may be able to elaborate a little bit more on that in the full meeting. But if he wants to just summarize it and add any extra details that I forgot in the full meeting, you should ask him that in the full meeting.
Just a follow-up question. How many neighbors signed the agreement, and was that unanimous or was that 90%?
So on page 10 of your staff report, there is a vicinity map for the recorded neighborhood declaration. 11 of those neighbors signed it in a unanimous fashion.
Very good. I'm going to go back to the commissioners and run through one more time to see if you have any additional questions. Commissioner Bacon?
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Commissioner Clark?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Hicks?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Marsh?
No, sir. Thank you.
Mayor Palazzola?
No questions, thanks.
Commissioner Sanders?
No questions at this time. Thanks.
Fine. I think that covers it.
Sarah,
Director
did you
Ross?
have anything to add as you've worked with Mr. Hooper and Ms. Archambault?
No, I don't believe so. Just here to answer any questions if you need additional information.
Any other general questions from the Planning Commission? And no, I have not gotten a haircut during this time.
So, general question, will we be implementing social distancing requirements going forward? Loaded question.
The city's plan at this point is not to fully open up city facilities to bring folks back until at least the tail end of phase 2, if not phase 3. So it could be early June before we have public meetings again in a modified way than we did before, as we want to keep those, as you alluded to, safe and socially distant. The governor's order that I'll go over once we get into the full meeting is temporary and is due to expire on May 18th unless he decides to extend that. That's a Monday. It is incidentally enough the end of phase 1, since we started phase 1 yesterday on May 4th here in Shelby County. Assuming that the numbers remain steady and we move towards a phase 2. Phase 2 would occur, the first day of phase 2 would be on May the 18th.
So for all practical purposes right now, our May subcommittee meeting will be virtual like this.
If we have if we have an item that rises to the need of having a subcommittee, a good example is with DRC having turned in their applications last week. We have one application. It's a relatively straightforward and simple application, so we're making the executive decision to not have a subcommittee to kind of not that we don't enjoy seeing all of the members of DRC, but we don't have to have one of these electronic meetings, and we can have an executive session that kind of touches on some issues and work it out with staff leading up to it. We feel that that may be a more expeditious way to get us to a meeting without getting into some of these technical issues, literally and figuratively, with these electronic meetings.
Got it.
Long answer to maybe.
Kind of how everything is.
I'd like to point out something just for you people not in construction. For some reason, we had to be essential. So for the past 6 to 8 weeks, we've been working 50 hours a week to keep up with what's going on in construction. So I hadn't had time to do my CU units out there. So yeah, I don't know about you, Dyke, but construction is just unlimited right now.
It's amazing because we've got a couple of projects, 2 hotel projects under construction downtown, the Canopy and the Centric, and it's amazing that many construction personnel being on top of each other like they are it hadn't been more contaminations or virus infections than there have. I mean, I don't know about you and what you've seen, but we haven't seen much on those 2 job sites.
We're on about 10 of those in town, and we haven't had a single one issue out anything that in regard to the COVID-19. We had 3 superintendents that were put on quarantine when they thought they were sick, but it turned out to be not. Fortunately, I didn't have anybody on the job site at that time, but right now we haven't had any projects canceled except one down in Texas. Short of that, it's still going 110%.
Good. Not sure nationwide. It's weird out there nationwide. Very, very, very strange. Hey, Cameron, what happened to the scooter discussion? Did that get put to bed?
We're still doing some research on it. That may be an item that we bring forward, but we kind of like you and Keith, we've been essential throughout this thing and working beyond the regular hours, trying to get everything shored up and ready, and haven't had time to really focus on those ordinances, but we have not forgotten it. It's open tabs on my computer.
Yeah, I was just curious.
But commissioners, while we have a few minutes before our 6 o'clock start, I will say this about Cameron and his team at Community and Economic Development. I think you would be extremely impressed and very proud of his efforts and his leadership this past week, Wednesday through Friday, and then yesterday afternoon. Cameron and a small select team have engaged in 16 virtual town hall meetings with every business sector within our city. They've identified these sectors, pulling data from essential, non-essential, all the different metric points that they have at the city, and spent time training each one of those business sectors on the Shelby County Back to Business guidelines, so that our business owners and our merchants would have the ability to receive the guidelines, have training from people like our fire marshal, Cameron, Marie, and others were on that team. They were able to have Q&A, and they had sectors, just restaurant, just houses of worship. That's not a business sector, but we did divide the community in those different areas. They were able to do that and to make the reopening as smooth as possible, keeping in mind that we wanted to promote public health and safety and also balance the commerce part so that they would not conflict with each other. We'll have boots on the ground this week and next week doing goodwill calls to trust and verify that the guidelines are being put into place and helping educate the business owners. And I can safely say our peer cities in our community, in our Shelby County community, have not invested any of that amount of talent to do that. I think they just put out the guidelines, and it was every man for himself, and maybe even caveat emptor for the consumers out there. So I'm very proud of Cameron and his team for putting that together, and they worked very hard. I think as we move at some point in time in the future, when we reflect back on COVID from a learning standpoint, we will have learned a lot about public health and commerce, but we will also, the work that, again, Cameron and his team have done is we know all of our businesses, we know their contact information. A lot of that's been cleaned up, a lot of emails, phone numbers. We have really almost back to the Chairman Harless days when he was chairman of the Economic Development Commission, when they made those, what we would call field calls. I think, Chairman, you probably remember those, where you would go with a staff member and go and grace the doors of a business and say, hi, I'm from the city and I'm also a citizen servant and we're here to help. I think you probably remember those days, Mr. Chairman.
Those were the good old days.
That's right. So Cameron, thank you. And please pass that on to your staff.
Well, it goes without saying, though, since Fire Marshal Dwyer is on here, it was really his effort, and I was just a chrome hanger on his fire truck leading us through that.
Well, only this group can understand this. Now we've given Jody the big head. I don't know if they make one of those fire helmets big enough for him now. Let's hope so.
I'm sorry, Mayor. Let me get back into my. Let me. Thank you so much, Cameron.
Oh,
He keeps those on his desk.
Yeah,
Well, great job, guys. That's awesome. That's great.
yeah, way to go. Yeah, great.
It helped give a little bit of levity to some challenging conversations last week and yesterday.
Yes, it did, but it was truly a team effort from it. There was so much done by so many people to make that happen. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you for the update, Mayor. That's awesome. Great job, guys.
well, someone said, we've only got a couple minutes. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. We were on a regional task force call, and Patrick and I were on it, and someone said something to the effect of, and Chief Selberg was on the call, and someone said something to the effect of, well, how are you getting that done in Germantown? And I think after we hit mute, Chief Selberg said, well, don't they know we're a Baldridge city? But anyway, so sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Chairman.
No, Mr. Mayor, I just had a comment that this is what makes Germantown so special. It's, we all sometimes forget that the efforts that people go through to make our city so special. And, you know, hats off to the fire department, the police department, the first responders, the public works people, all the administration for doing all the things they're doing to make this city as great as it is.
Thank you.
Tony, what do we need to do now to proceed?
You're ready to proceed when the clock strikes 6. You're ready to proceed.
Thank you. Have we heard from Forrest?
He has not shown up yet. When he does make it into the meeting, I'll let you know.
Very good.
And we've got about 30 seconds, Chairman Harless.
Are you gonna give me a countdown?
I'll leave that to NASA. I've been called a lot of things this week, but a rocket scientist isn't one of them. All right, we are at 6 o'clock, Chairman.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the May meeting of the Germantown Planning Commission. We are on a virtual TV recording, and I'm turning the meeting over to Director Ross for some comments. Director?
Thank you, Chairman Harless. All local governing bodies in the state of Tennessee have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and Germantown is no exception. In an effort to carry out its governance and operational responsibilities lawfully and effectively, while also considering the protection of public health, safety, and welfare, the Germantown City Administration has taken steps to conduct Board of Mayor and Alderman meetings and other public meetings electronically, including this Planning Commission meeting. These actions were taken in response to Governor Bill Lee's Executive Order 16, which suspended the requirements of the Tennessee Open Meetings Act to the extent necessary to allow governing bodies subject to the act to meet and conduct essential businesses by electronic means. The Germantown Board of Mayor and Aldermen has also determined that meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Further, notice of such electronic meetings has been and will continue to be published in the same manner as currently used for regular meetings, including within the newspaper, as well as on the city's website. The public is also and will continue to be able to view the agenda, have live access to the actual meetings by electronic means, by logging into Germantown's webpage, and by clicking the appropriate link. Video recordings of the meetings will be made available as soon as practicable after each meeting on the city's website at www.germantown-tn.gov. Public comments were taken as part of an email option, and that email address was pcph@germantown-tn.gov. These measures are temporary and are due to expire on May 18th, 2020, unless further action is taken by Governor Lee. Thank you, Chairman Harless, for that opportunity to read that into the record.
Director Ross, thank you very much for the comments and reading the proclamation. The meeting has been called to order. I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mr. Bacon?
Here.
Mr. Saunders?
Here.
Ms. Hicks?
Here.
Mr. Marsh?
I'm here.
Okay. Mr. Hernandez? Alderman Owens? Mr. Clark?
Here.
Chairman Harless?
Here.
Mayor Palazzolo?
Here.
And we do have a quorum for tonight's meeting. We have one item to be reviewed and heard tonight. That is regarding the Wilder Plan rezoning. I will turn the meeting over to Director Ross and staff for presentation.
Chairman Harless, would you like to consider the March 3rd minutes first?
I do need to have a motion for approval of the minutes from last meeting.
Move to approve,
Motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Saunders seconded. Please call the roll.
Mr. Bacon?
Yes.
Ms. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Chairman Harless,
Yes.
Mayor Palazola.
Yes.
And the minutes from the last meeting are approved. Apologize for skipping over that important item. We now go to the one item to be heard. This is the Wilder Plan rezoning, and I will turn it over to staff for presentation.
Thank you, Chairman Harless. Want to make sure that everyone can see my presentation up. Item 5A on tonight's agenda is the Wilder Plan rezoning. It's immediately east of Forest Hill Elementary School, approximately 1,390 feet off of Forest Hill Irene Road. The request is for approval of a 3-acre parcel from RE1 Residential Estate 1 acre to R Low Density Single Family Residential. The applicant is Taylor Land Investors, and they are present this evening. Their representative, John Duke, and they have their consultant team from ETI, Mr. Steve Hooper and Ms. Anita Archambault. This site is 3 acres on the northeast corner of the current Forest Hill Elementary School property. It is directly south of the current Wilder zone, residentially zoned property here. As you can see, the majority of the area is already rezoned R, excluding the large existing house that is being incorporated into a future planned subdivision. This 3 acres would be added to the existing R if approved and pulled out from the existing school property as part of a land exchange that I'll briefly touch on. Overall, though, this property started as this particular 3 acres was part of a school property, GMSD property, and used as part of the Forest Hill Elementary 38-acre approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals in 2017. Both buildings have been constructed. The second building is the school's administrative district office, school district office, and this northeastern 3-acre portion is currently undeveloped. On September 24th, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen approved on third reading a rezoning for the 32 acres north of the Forest Hill Elementary School property from RE1 to R Low Density Single Family Residential. Taylor Land Investors currently owns this property and intends to develop it as one single family residential project. In February of 2020, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen approved a land exchange agreement which included the following. GMSD would deed 3 acres of their property that we're considering tonight to Taylor Land Investors, with the intent of that property being incorporated into their residential development. Taylor Land Investors would deed 5 acres of their property on the north side of their ownership here in this area to the city of Germantown for use of public utilities. And the city of Germantown would deed other property elsewhere in the city to the Germantown Municipal School District. These 3 acres, in order to be developed consistently with the rest of the proposed single-family residential development concept that Mr. Duke and ETI are working on, is going to be required to be rezoned to low-density single-family residential. So that is the request in front of you tonight. When considering a rezoning request, the Planning Commission should take into account the basis for granting a rezoning from 2366 within the Germantown Municipal Code, which is whenever the public necessity, convenience, general welfare, or good zoning practice justifies such action, a mistake in the original zoning, or a change in the neighborhood. Other criteria used to determine a change in the neighborhood to justify a rezoning that is part of state of Tennessee court decisions is changes in populations, both of the area proposed to be rezoned and in the surrounding areas, changes in road patterns or traffic volumes, and including the development of new roadways in the vicinity, the need for the rezoning based on changes in whatever is classified as the neighborhood, which may not necessarily be limited to what one would think of as a relatively concise area, and which may include changes in population, development trends, the existing character of nearby neighborhood, and changes that may have occurred in the character of nearby property. And then finally, the effect of the requested change in zoning on adjoining or nearby property. Per section 23229 of the municipal code, a sketch plan or concept plan for the potential development is required and must indicate how the property may be developed for the permitting use while meeting the requirements of the requested zoning district. This is the concept plan that illustrates the lots and how they would meet the requirements of the R low density single family zoning district. The applicant has also conducted a neighborhood outreach plan with different interested parties in the area. That has all been provided to you as part of your agenda packet, including a restrictive covenant agreement with some of the nearby neighbors. Any approval of this rezoning request does not signify or imply approval of the proposed concept sketch plan, which is shown overall. The 3 acres is included here at the bottom corner. You can see with this aerial that there's still a significant buffer area between the administration building and the existing school building that would all be pulled into the development. And then, as noted previously, there is an existing house within the development area that is left as residential estate 1 acre lot. There's approximately just under 3 acres as part of that lot, and that will all remain as part of that single lot within this larger development plan. The 5 acres that were deeded over to the city as part of the land exchange are up here, and this is an area that the applicant is indicating on their concept plan that would be used as common open space. The applicant did meet all of the requirements that were put forward in notes back to them prior to the prior to this meeting. Wanted to also make sure that the applicant is available for questions, but this concludes staff presentation. Just a note, though, that all of the neighbors that signed the agreement that has been referenced a couple times are not all necessarily adjacent to the property. They are within the larger area. So some of those neighbors that signed this are a little bit further south even of the elementary school, but they are part of the subdivision in this general vicinity of Hollow Creek Road and the street that it intersects with.
Director Ross, thank you for your presentation. I would now like to ask the commissioners if they have questions. Commissioner Bacon.
Mr. Ross, I've just got one question, and I'm not able to zoom in on that plan, but just out of curiosity, the 3 lots at the cul-de-sac appear to be pretty large. It looked like they were larger than a third acre. I can't really see that. But are those approaching almost a half an acre?
The largest one looks to be just over 21,000 square feet. And
That's right.
and the smallest one is just over 15,000 square feet. There's 3 that are just over 15,000 square feet, 2 that are just over 16,000 square feet. One is just under 19, and then the 21,000. A good comparison that Mr. Duke and his team might also touch on is the lot sizes within Maplewood, which are, it's also zoned are low density single family residential, but the average lot size within Maplewood is around 19,000 square feet.
Yeah, it's just interesting with a cul-de-sac, and obviously with the pie-shaped lots, you end up with pretty large lots. So no other questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Clark?
Mr. Ross, is that plan that you showed with the overall plan with this cul-de-sac in it, is that in our packet somewhere? That plan, yeah. I didn't see it.
It's in the document that says Wilder.
So that may be in the other materials, Commissioner Clark, that were on the website.
Yeah, I think it's attached to the, what is it, the traffic study?
It's in the
letter?
traffic study, yeah.
And again, this is just a concept plan for the overall idea and how this 3 acres would be pulled into it.
Okay, and I guess our a question while I've got the floor is that this change or this zoning does not affect anything that we previously approved there to the north.
It does not. And all you've approved to the north at this point is simply the zone change from RE1 to R.
Right. And to reiterate, this does not change that.
No, this does not.
Okay, that's all I've got.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Hicks?
No question.
Question?
No, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Marsh?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Has Alderman Owens joined us? I don't think so. Let me move on. Commissioner Saunders?
No question at this time.
Thank you. Mayor Palzola?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you, and I have no questions. Staff, I appreciate your presentation. We now ask if the applicant would like to make a presentation.
Don, you're on mute. Should be at the bottom of the screen.
I got it.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
I just want to say we didn't have any opposition to this, where we had a lot of opposition originally when we first did the rezoning. Everybody has bought on to this.
Mr. Duke?
Yes.
Let me interrupt for just a second. I'm going to ask you to state your name and address for the record, please.
Okay, it's John Duke, 8995 Winston Woods Circle South, Germantown, Tennessee.
Thank you. Please continue.
Yeah, so it was really exciting that everybody in the neighborhood has signed on with this. We had everybody that had signed the original agreement, thought this was a good idea. I actually reduced the number of lots. Originally we had 75, now we have 72, and we're gaining a park as well. So it's kind of made the development better. It's made the neighborhood better. We don't impact anything in any other neighborhood. We don't have any streets that connect to the other neighborhood. We're kind of be self-contained in there. And just want to remind you that every neighborhood in around the school is either R or denser zoning. And we're just kind of going along with that same thing to create this neighborhood for this school. I think that's really pretty much sums it up. The school made all the difference of why we're asking for the rezoning, the major change in the neighborhood because of the school.
Mr. Duke, thank you for the comments. I'm going to ask commissioners if you have questions. Commissioner Bacon?
Don't have any questions of the applicant. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Clark?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Hicks?
No questions.
Commissioner Marsh?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Saunders?
No questions.
And Mayor Palazoa?
I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Duke, I have a question. Could you comment if the school board has totally bought into this swap of land?
Well, I didn't get a unanimous vote with it, but it had other things tied into it. But yes, I think all the members that I talked to said that they were very happy with the land swap.
Very good.
Yeah, I think it's been good for everybody. Everybody's been excited about it.
Good. Any other comments? If not, Director Ross, have we had any letters from the citizens?
No, sir. We did not receive any letters in opposition or support of this application.
And how did we request the feedback from citizens?
The citizens were given an option to email in their concerns to an email address, PCPH, standing for Planning Commission Public Hearing, at germantown-tn.gov. That email address and instructions to provide comment was on the city's website as a directive, also on the same page with the agenda and the agenda packet. And it was opened up on Thursday evening when you all received your packet materials, and was closed at 12 noon today for a commenting period. And again, over that period, we did not receive any comments opposed to this or in favor of it. And staff, nor myself, received any emails or comments in our city email addresses.
Director, thanks for the explanation. At this point, commissioners, I would like to have a motion regarding this project.
Mr. Chairman, the subcommittee did not meet to discuss this request due to the current state and local shelter-in-place orders. This evening's proposed motion is approval to rezone a 3-acre parcel, the Wilder Plan rezoning, located immediately east of Forest Hill Elementary School, approximately 1,390 feet off Tel Irene Road, from RE1 residential estate, R single-family residential, subject to the comments and conditions listed above in the staff report and the plans and documents submitted with the application.
Thank you, Commissioner Bacon. Do I have a second?
Second it.
Saunders. Commissioner Saunders made a second. Commissioner Bacon made the motion. Commissioners, we now open the floor for questions or comments. Again, I'm going to go through alphabetically to keep this in order. Commissioner Bacon?
I don't have any questions. I think this follows very good zoning practice, certainly follows current zoning or current growth trend. most notably the elementary school, but with the improvements to Forest Hill Road, and then distinctly the subdivision immediately to the west, Maplewood. So.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner Bacon. Sorry, Commissioner Clark.
No questions.
Commissioner Hicks.
No questions, but I do believe with the change in the neighborhood, with the school coming in, and it will be, this rezoning would make it consistent with the property to the north.
Commissioner Marsh.
Yeah, I have no questions. Just to echo the comments of others, I think the general trends in growth in the neighborhood surrounding this area, the adjacent property use, the presence of the new school, and this being very fitting with that, the increase in traffic and characteristics of traffic flow along Forest Hill as that's been expanded and widened, all supports the zoning as proposed.
Thank you. Commissioner Saunders.
I have no questions. Echo the same comments of my fellow commissioners. I think due to the change in the neighborhood, basically for the school and the widening of Forest Hill Ring and the other subdivision around there, this warrants this change in zoning.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mayor Palazzolo.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any questions. I would echo the comments made by my fellow commissioners. I would also add one other point. The private agreement struck by the applicant with the neighboring property owners only fortifies the ability for good rezoning, since they approved and in essence signed off on this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. My comments are minimal. I would like to thank the developer for including a park. I think that's important when you have a neighborhood this size. It adds to the quality of life for the neighborhood and the people in that neighborhood. So kudos for that. I also think reaching out to the residents and getting their support and agreement says a lot about communications and how well this worked. So again, kudos. And with that said, I'm now going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mr. Bacon?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes, I guess I got confused on the comments earlier, but my comments are just sound what everybody else has said on the need for rezoning, just with the development to the north. Just makes it more of a cohesive neighborhood. So I'll be voting in favor of this project.
Ms. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes, based on my prior comments.
Okay. Chairman Harless?
With the change in the neighborhood and the population, I'm voting yes.
Mayor Palazzolo?
Yes.
And with that, the agreement is met, or I'm sorry, the project is approved by the Planning Commission. It now goes to the BMA for 3 readings. Director Ross, do we know when the BMA meeting will be for this item?
Chairman Harless will have to look at the schedule and coordinate with administration to have that on the agenda, but we'll follow up with the applicant as soon as we know.
Very good. Thank you. I want to thank the developer for his hard work, and also the administration for all their efforts on making this work. Is there anything else from the commissioners that they would like to comment on, either liaison reports or any other information they would like to pass on?
I'd just like to make a quick comment, Mr. Chairman. I echo the comments. I'd like to applaud the administration, certainly for conducting multitudes of public meetings in this format. It's a pretty challenging time. So I think this went exceptionally well. I would like to applaud you as well, Mr. Chairman, and the conduct of the meeting. Certainly unique for us. I think it's the first time, possibly in the history of Germantown, that we've had a virtual planning commission meeting. So very well done. Thank you to all who contributed to make it a success.
Thank you, Commissioner Bacon. Any other comments from the commissioners?
I
If
agree.
not,
I want to agree.
go ahead, Mr. Hicks.
Mr.
Commissioner Hicks.
I just want to second what Commissioner Bacon said. I agree. I think this went well, and I appreciate everybody's work to make it happen.
Very nice. Other comments from commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say, I agree with everyone. I just hope it doesn't turn out to be the norm. I miss seeing people. But it has been a great success, and I appreciate everything everyone's done to get this thing to where not only we can participate in it, but the citizens of Germantown have opportunity to participate in it.
Again, I'd echo that. Thanks to all the commissioners for your time and efforts. And if there's no other comments, we stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.